Welcome everyone to Pima County Democratic Party's final forum for CD6 candidates. We've had several before this, and maybe we saved the best for last, but I don't want to say that. But we have three candidates here. We have Avery Anderson, Kirsten Engel, and Daniel Hernandez. And I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dylan Smith. I knew I was going to do it. Dylan Smith, who's a journalist with Tucson Sentinel. Thank you for moderating today.
As you just heard, I'm Dylan Thomas. Dylan Smith. I'm the editor and publisher of your local independent nonprofit watchdog news source, TucsonSentinel.com. I'm honored to be asked to moderate this public forum of congressional candidates, and it's really great to see so many of you turn out this afternoon. We've got a number of important topics to cover, and we only have 60 minutes scheduled for this discussion, so we have to put some pretty strict limits on the lengths of some of these answers. So to make sure that everybody gets their fair chance to weigh in, let's respect the candidates' time as well as your own, and refrain from clapping, cheering, booing during the debate, except for now, as I briefly introduce the candidates. Avery Anderson is a lead engineer for Raytheon, the University of Colorado Boulder graduate, has worked in wind energy as well as the defense sector. Kirsten Engel serves in the Arizona Senate and is the Associate Dean and Director of the Environmental Law Program at the University of Arizona. In her time in the legislature, she's worked to fund public schools and protect Arizona's environment. Daniel Hernandez is a member of the Arizona House of Representatives who's worked to protect reproductive rights and affordable health care and advocated for the LGBT community. Thank you all for being here. We're going to spend some time today digging into the specifics about what each of you wants to accomplish if you are elected to Congress and how you would realistically get those things done. The audience wants to hear about your qualifications and why you are the best candidate for them. But before we jump into those questions, each of you will have the chance to briefly introduce yourselves to the audience here today. Daniel Hernandez, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're running, why you are the most qualified person on this stage to be a member of Congress. You've got 90 seconds.
Thanks, Dylan. Well, thank you so much to the Pima County Democratic Party and to Dylan for hosting us for this conversation today. My name is Daniel Hernandez. I am someone who has been a part of this community my entire life. I grew up right here in Southern Arizona. I was born here, and I've been driven by one guiding principle my entire life, which in Spanish, it's a lesson that my grandmother taught me, means putting in your grain of sand. The idea that whether you're big or you're small, rich or poor, we all have our own part to contribute to make this community a better place. So I trained as a nursing assistant, as a phlebotomist. I even did 2 years of cancer research here at the University of Arizona Cancer Center, thinking I would go into healthcare. But at 18, I realized the importance of politics and advocacy, and I started becoming involved in public policy. At 20, I was working as an intern at the Arizona Students Association, where I passed my first piece of legislation. I also worked in the office of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, as many of you know, on the day of the terrific shooting here in Tucson. I'm a lifelong advocate and someone who has been trying to take the things that I've learned and experienced and turn them into positive action. I'm not only someone who knows how to fight, I know how to win. Whether it was a school board member from 2011 to 2019, or as a legislator from 2017 to today, I know how to win, I know how to fight, and I know how to get things done for Southern Arizona. That's why I'm running. Right now, we're at a crucial moment in time. We need to protect reproductive rights, voting rights, and need to stand up to the extremists, both in Washington, D.C. and in Phoenix.
Thank you, Daniel. Kirsten Engel, why are you running for Congress?
Well, first of all, thank you so much to the Pima County Democratic Party, and hello to my fellow candidates in this race. This is the most important election of our lifetimes. Democracy is on the ballot, a woman's right to choose is on the ballot, the planet is on the ballot. And it could all, whether we're able to address those critical issues, could come down to who wins this seat. And this forum today is for you to decide who's the best Democrat to do that. I'm not a career politician. I'm a mom. I'm a teacher at this very university. And I'm stepping up because I see the need and think I have a way of contributing. I'm also a former state legislator representing a district in this very congressional district who earned a reputation of somebody who could get things done in a highly partisan atmosphere of Phoenix legislature without compromising our democratic values. I think more than ever today, Arizona needs an advocate in Washington, D.C. that you can trust. I'd like to be that advocate, and I will not let you down. So I'm very much looking forward to this forum.
Thank you. Avery Anderson, why are you running?
Okay, so my name is Avery Anderson. I am one of, if not the youngest Democratic congressional candidate in the country. At 28 years old, I'm an engineer with industry experience in renewable energies, and I've been working in a leadership role for the past 4 or 5 years now on some high-tech projects and programs with our U.S. government, U.S. military. So where I come from, I grew up in a military family. My dad's retired Air Force. Spent 32 years in the Air Force, retired as a colonel a few years ago. Given that, I grew up living all over across the country, several countries, and that experience really had a profound impact on me. I think I've matured, understanding the perspective of the differences in the country, but more importantly, the commonalities and what really drives us together, makes us the greatest country on earth. Kind of why I'm running here. So with my experience in the wind energy field, I saw firsthand the impacts that our fossil fuel subsidies have on a kind of a resilient or so people and so companies and governments were more apprehensive to make the switch to wind energies and solar energies because it was not they could not compete with the fossil fuel, the artificial price the fossil fuel industry was having, thanks to our government subsidies. So I see a lot of government inaction in regards to climate, and I'm putting my neck out on the line to kind of be that person to spearhead that transition kind of away from fossil fuels and more towards sustainable energies.
Thank you. So our civic discourse, as we've seen this week, these past several years, is at a fever pitch. On most issues, Congress is at a complete stalemate. How will you back President Biden's agenda? On what issues would you work across the aisle? And what issues would you work against the Republican Party? Daniel Hernandez, 90 seconds.
I think right now the biggest issue that I would fight back against the extremists, both in Congress and all over the country, is those folks who are fighting to take a woman's right to choose. When it comes to the right to have access to abortion, this is not a fight that I just joined a couple weeks ago because it's a popular thing to do. I've been in this fight for years. I was the RAIS program manager. I ran the National Latino Outreach Program at Planned Parenthood. And I've even been able to get Republicans here locally in Arizona to work with us to stop anti-abortion legislation, including killing funding for crisis pregnancy centers. So when it comes time to standing up and fighting for some of the most important issues right now, I think upmost and at the top of my list is making sure that we work to make sure that every person who wants access to abortion care has it, fighting to codify Roe at the federal level, so we don't live in a patchwork of laws where depending on your zip code or depending on your state, you have access to certain types of healthcare. I'm someone who builds coalitions. I'm someone who's able to get people who traditionally wouldn't work on issues that people consider to be progressive or democratic to work with me. That's why, as an LGBTQ legislator and the chair of the LGBTQ caucus, I was able to work to repeal a law that was called No Promo Homo, a bill that made it illegal for 28 years in Arizona public schools for us to even mention the LGBTQ community. So I was able to work to bring Republicans to work with me to get that done, and also to make sure that we introduce non-discrimination legislation. So there's a lot of things that we have to do, but I think at the top of our list is protecting the most vulnerable, and that means protecting access to abortion and making sure we stand up for the LGBTQ community.
Thank you. Avery Anderson, how would you work across the aisle? How would you, build a wall at the aisle?
Sure. Yeah. So my biggest kind of goal here is climate once again. So the best way to bring people on your side is to educate them. People need to know what's at stake, what's important, and what our goals are. So the best thing you can do across the aisle is just to inform people, teach them, be respectful, but also advocate. And this is important. This needs to happen, yesterday. As far as what walls need to go up, there are certain non-negotiables for me. Being able to work with it firsthand, I was able to come up with data, see data firsthand, that honestly scares the heck out of me. So, to me, it's more important that we teach the other side of the aisle that this is important. This is something that needs to be done in a respectful manner, but also we need to drive the point home. This is something that we need to work on now. We don't have time to kind of keep waiting and doing these little patchwork, treat the symptoms kind of things. We need to root cause it and get to the bottom of it really as quickly and as efficiently as we can.
Thank you. Kirsten Engel.
Yes, you don't survive up in that Arizona legislature without learning how to reach across the aisle, get things done. Issues that I worked on very effectively was, first of all, criminal justice reform. In this state, we have the 5th highest incarceration rate in the nation. We spend over 1/10 of our budget on our jails and prisons. And this is something where I was the leader for many years as the ranking member on committees, working with members of the Republican Party on reform efforts to have common sense sentencing, to making sure that people could have a career after they leave prison, that they have the tools and the skills for that, and that we actually deal with the sentencing of nonviolent drug offenders. Also on water issues, this is an area that really is my area of expertise as an environmental attorney, has been water and climate change. And we know that we are in a crisis on these issues. And I worked on that Colorado Drought Contingency Plan, which was the first step in this state actually trying to get on top of our water issues. And yet there is so much more that we can do. I worked on that with the speaker. You worked on that by, going to his home and going to his Apple Festival and working with my colleagues. We do have a lot of really, really important challenges, and I would put at the top of the list guaranteeing a woman's right to choose. This is critical. I'm a mom. This is.
And that's actually the next question,
Oh.
but your time's up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But so as touched on, the Supreme Court certainly seems poised to overturn Roe v. Wade, eliminating the right to choose an abortion. That pending decision has already been seized on by many on the right as an opportunity to roll back other rights, the right to use contraception, the right to marry the person you love, regardless of their gender or race. What effective measures would you take if you were elected to Congress on those issues? Kirsten Engel, 90 seconds.
Well, I'm glad we are getting to this question because this is so critical, and I'm outraged. As a woman, as a mom of a teenage daughter, I am outraged that the Supreme Court is taking away her right and control over her own body. This is the first time we are actually going backwards, that she will have less rights than I have had. And we know what the impact is here in Arizona. In Arizona, abortion could be entirely banned, or, this is actually the least harmful alternative. It would be banned after 15 weeks, but even there, no exception for rape or incest. This is an issue that I have been speaking out about, that I have been working on, and what we need to do in Congress is to work on a coalition in order to codify these rights statutorily. Certainly not as good as a constitutional right, but that is something clear that Congress can do. We also know, and I know as an attorney, that what is behind Roe versus Wade is the right to privacy. And if they overturn Roe versus Wade, they're taking a shot at our privacy rights, which protects the right to use contraceptives. It protects the right to marry who we love. And we have to make sure that we stop this erosion of our privacy rights and that we guarantee them in Congress.
Avery Anderson.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on a lot of what Kirsten just said. There are a lot of good stuff. We do need to take steps to codify Roe at the national level. Something we can all do actually is this election, we need to elect people at the state representative level, and we can codify that in our own constitution at the state level. So we can at least protect it here at home while we work on codifying it at the national level. Like Kirsten said, this is just who do you want to marry? You might have any say in that. And it's just, it's really disgusting to see that from the right. There's a piece of legislature here that less than 20 or 30% of Americans support. So we're going to have this rule of the minority over the majority, and that's a really dangerous precedent to set. And that's just not a recipe for success, kind of at scale. So it is important. We need to codify this at national level, but in the meantime, we should work on codifying at the state level with this election.
Daniel.
The fight to protect abortion care is deeply personal to me. It is something that I've not only been an advocate for, it's something I've been a champion on. That's why in 2018, I was awarded the Women's Healthcare Champion by the American College of Gynecology and Obstetrics. I've been in this fight professionally as a Planned Parenthood employee, as I mentioned, but I've also been in this fight as an advocate, fighting for comprehensive sex education here in Tucson, in Sunnyside, and getting it passed. Making sure that we are expanding options and accessibility to contraception, because that is one of the most proven ways to prevent unintended pregnancies. So when we're talking about this fight, this is not just one where we need people to be on the right side of this issue. We need people to fight, and we need people to be advocates who are champions. So that's where I've been at the legislature. I've been doing this all over the country as a staffer at Planned Parenthood, and it's something that I'm going to continue to be doing as a member of Congress. When we're talking about this, for many years, it was those women who were wearing pink who supported abortion that were standing by the LGBTQ community, trying to ensure that state by state, and then eventually at the court level, we were able to pass LGBTQ equality for marriage. So now it's our turn as LGBTQ Americans to stand with those women. It is completely unfair that you living in one state means that you have limited access to healthcare. Abortion is healthcare, and we need to make sure that all Americans, regardless of where they live, have access to that. Something that I've been fighting for at the legislature, and something that I'm going to continue to fight for as your member of Congress. The last thing that I'll say on this is, for me, as someone who has been in this fight, I know how to win. That's why we were able to kill several measures to introduce crisis pregnancy funding here in the state of Arizona for the first 4 years at the legislature that I was there. So we need to keep fighting, we need to keep standing up, and we need to keep saying the word, which is abortion is healthcare. Because people are afraid to say it, and we need to make sure that we don't let folks on the right demonize healthcare, because that's what this is.
Thank you. In recent weeks, the toll of gun violence has rarely left the headlines. I would imagine rarely left the minds of so many of us in Tucson. Please tell us, in addition to which specific gun control measures you support, what realistically could be implemented to deal with the root causes of gun violence? Kirsten Engel, you have 2 minutes.
Well, this is also an issue that's very personal to me, as I'm sure it's personal to many of you. I'm one of those parents who've received, that phone call no parent should receive. And that's from your daughter crouching under a desk in a school while they're whispering on the phone to you, while there is a suspected gunman outside the school. It's terrifying. And I'm sure that any of you, none of us should ever have to go through that. And in my situation, thank goodness, no harm ensued. But of course, we know that's not the case with respect to the parents of the children in Uvalde, Parkland, even up here in Phoenix. So this is something that has affected our community so deeply. And we hear from Republicans all the time, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Well, we know that isn't the case. We saw that front and center with Uvalde, but we have seen that over and over again. At this point, we need to pass common sense gun violence prevention measures that a clear majority support. And the ones that I would support, I mean, how is it that an 18-year-old, who we don't even trust to drink, can walk into a gun store and buy a weapon of war? Yes, we do have the right to bear arms, but this has gone too far. And the Supreme Court, as I know as an attorney, has said, the Second Amendment does not prevent the regulation for the safety of people for preventing gun violence. So what we need to do, we need to pass comprehensive background checks, close those loopholes, the gun show loophole that allows anyone to buy a gun at a gun show without having to go through that background check. Close that loophole that allows, boyfriends, to be able to have guns, even though they may have a protection order against them because of domestic violence. I would support a ban on assault weapons, and I would also support extreme risk orders of protection. I think
Time's
that,
up, I'm sorry.
okay,
You went rather over.
thank you.
Dan Hernandez, same question.
This is obviously a very personal issue to me. I have been a part of this fight for 11 years. When we're talking about gun violence prevention, because that's what this is, it's not about gun control, it's about preventing the violence caused by guns. It's about making sure that we encourage responsible gun ownership and gun safety. Been in this fight and I've been a leader for 11 years because far too many times I've had to hold the hand of a parent who has lost a loved one, a child, to gun violence. While we have had more than 14 mass shootings since that, and that was just a couple of weeks ago, we know that every year, thousands of Americans are dying. More children die every year because of gun violence in the United States of America than any other cause. Every day, 100 Americans are dying because of gun violence, and 200 are being injured. So this is not an issue that just happens every time that there are headlines. This is an issue that impacts everyday Arizonans and everyday Americans. That's why I've led the fight, not just here in Arizona, but in Washington, D.C. Back when Mansion Toomey was introduced in 2013, the last real bipartisan effort to try and pass comprehensive background checks. I went to Nevada and lobbied the legislature to try and pass comprehensive background checks. When that failed, we took it to the ballot and won in Nevada. So as a legislator, not only have I been advocating, but unfortunately, because of the gun lobby, which has way too much power in the halls of power here in Arizona and in Washington, D.C., we've been blocked. But I was also able to win over my Republican colleagues. I was pleased to be joined by Senator Heather Carter and Senator Kate Brophy McGee to introduce bipartisan gun safety legislation dealing with domestic violence. That is why I'm proud to be the only candidate up here endorsed by gun safety organizations, Everytown for Gun Safety and the Brady campaign, because I've been in this fight for over a decade. So we need to do a lot of things. But the most basic thing we can do is pass comprehensive background checks to ensure that no one has access to firearms that shouldn't have them. We need to make sure that we start looking at how we not only talk about mental health, but not let it become a smokescreen or a stigma. We need to invest in mental health. We need to make sure that we are taking care of our kids in our schools, because it's not about hardening schools or closing off all the doors as has been talked about by multiple Republicans. It's about making sure that we take guns out of the hands of those who shouldn't have them by preventing them from having them in the first place.
Thank you. Avery Anderson, what would you do about gun control, stemming gun violence?
So unfortunately, just like Kirsten, I do have firsthand experience dealing with mass shootings. Back in 2018, during the mass shooting in Las Vegas, my mom was actually a charge nurse for the Level 1 Trauma Center in Vegas. I was one of the first people to kind of come see that, and seeing really what was, just a lot of bodies that were left out, in the sun for several days while I tried to make sense of what was going on. It really had a profound impact on me. It's unfortunate that this is the world we live in. This is not a partisan issue. This is something I've heard a lot from, right, left, center. We need to have comprehensive background checks on all gun purchases. There is no way that an 18-year-old should be able to go buy a gun and go to school the same day. And unfortunately, what happened there. This is one of those things where we're kind of getting accustomed to it. unfortunately, even though we do have a lot of neighbors and our European allies that are, have very similar gun laws to us and don't have this kind of problem. So we need to really root cause what's going on here. As Daniel said, mental health screenings are really good. Anytime I can, push for therapy for anybody, we need to get rid of the stigma around that and really push for, mental health and make that part of our kind of our big healthcare plan. And just to kind of tie things together here, it is so easy in America right now to buy guns. We have about 200,000 guns a year trafficked into Mexico, where Mexico only has one legitimate gun store. These guns go into the hands of criminals, cartel members, and that fuels the drug trade that goes across our borders. That fuels the people seeking asylum here in America, and that it's making our immigration policies much worse as well. So there's a lot going on here we need to unpack, and I'm really looking forward to being able to root cause this and work on actual tangible solutions.
Thank you. Despite redistricting, what's now CD6 is still a border district. Do you support the Biden administration's enforcement efforts at the border? What can be done to stem the continued flow of drugs and the involvement of cartels in human smuggling while protecting the rights of people who live near the border? And what about Title 42? Avery Anderson, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, so Title 42, unfortunately, was kind of presented to us as a bigoted smokescreen of all these immigrants coming here and bringing across COVID. So I am for kind of getting rid of Title 42 and reverting back to what we had prior to Trump. So for border security, we need to be staffing our border crossings and surrounding areas with more judges, more support personnel, using technology such as machine learning, AI, cameras, infrared cameras, to automate this system. So when we see things happen across illegally, we can make note of that and alert the local security forces to that instance. We are grossly underutilizing any automation we have, any technology we have to kind of aid that fight. We keep talking about throwing manpower at it, and that's not always the answer, right? There's a lot of areas across the border that are just, they're not well populated. They're very rural areas, and they need all the help they can get to feel safe in our country. So as far as Title 42, we need to recognize that these people that are coming across the border, seeking asylum or migrants, that they're people. They need to be treated with respect. They have a legal right here to see a judge, state their case in a timely manner, and we need to process claims in an efficient way. Right now, there's a massive backlog, and that's really unfortunate that we're dealing with such inefficiencies at this scale.
Thank you. Kirsten Engel.
Well, there's no question, Washington has failed us with respect to the border. And I don't care whether you're talking about Republican administrations or Democratic administrations, we're not getting the help we need from Washington. We do have real security issues in our border. We have drug smuggling, a lot of fentanyl coming over the border. We also have human smuggling. And I absolutely agree with Avery. We need to build up the technology that we're using on a border much more efficiently, much more smartly, and give up this idea that the Republicans keep on pushing is that we need to finish the wall. The wall is a 13th century solution to a 21st century problem. And I'm not even going into how it's destroyed our environment, desecrated Native American burial grounds. It is a disaster. But we also have a humanitarian crisis at the border. And we have to recognize that. There are thousands of people who are escaping really dangerous situations in their home countries who are coming to our border. And we need an orderly process. We need manpower there. We need a process to allow them to apply for asylum. We also need to protect our border communities. They should not be shouldering the burden of the large number of people that are coming. And finally, we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform in this country. It is way past due. We need a pathway to citizenship for those dreamers who have been in our nation, and this is the only country they know, and they're contributing to it, as well as those 10 million people who still don't have legal authorization to live here.
Thank you.
And these are issues I'm going to work on in Congress, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan, for the question. I've been representing Booker along with my colleague Representative D'Alessandro. Me for the last 6 years, she for the last 10 years. We talk to people on the border all the time. And one of the things that I think you need to be able to do to solve a problem is acknowledge that the problem exists. There are multiple crises at the border. There's a humanitarian crisis, there's a humanitarian and immigration, there's a security crisis, and there's also an economic crisis. So there's not one tool that will solve all of these issues. You have to look at every individual problem and be able to tackle them and work on them in a meaningful way. That's why I agreed with our senators that we need a better plan on what we're going to do if we're going to remove Title 42, because the people that live on the border are going to be the ones left holding the purse strings. And that's what we see all the time. So we need to make sure that we are preparing our border communities and that we're doing more to make them resilient. There are a lot of challenges living along the border. There's a lot of opportunities. When we look at places on the US-Mexico border, we need to invest in rural economic development, making sure that we provide educational opportunities. I was just in a community college a couple of weeks ago, talking to them, and what they kept saying was, we need more help. We need more resources to be able to keep kids in our communities here, to keep them home so that they don't have to feel like they have to go to Tucson. So we need to work on comprehensive immigration reform, which is not a partisan issue. When you can get the Chamber of Commerce and leading Latino organizations to agree that immigration reform has to get done, it is no longer a partisan issue. But we need to work together, and we need to stop putting politics first, but we need to put people first. So looking at how do we help the communities that live on the border so they're not left holding the strings of any decisions that are being made in Washington, D.C. And finally, and I think most importantly, that we deal with people humanely, that we treat them like we would treat our own brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Arizona's drought continues unabated despite the first few sprinkles of monsoon rain we've seen over the past couple of days. Our water supply in Lake Mead is vanishing. What can the federal government do to manage water resources? How can we reduce demand and balance the need for water between the residents of Southern Arizona against the uses by agriculture, mines, and the projected new residential developments and all the jobs that those things will bring? Again, Hernandez, 90 seconds.
Thank you, Dylan. You can't just show up to a farmer who's been in the generational business for decades or for years and say, your job is no longer relevant. We're going to stop and give you no more water. We need to work to partner with them to make sure that we have better technology. Right now, there's some really innovative work happening right here at the University of Arizona with an Israeli partner called ENDRIP to be able to use 80% less water to be able to irrigate different crops. So we need to look at investing in technology. And I think the federal government did a good thing a couple of months ago when during the infrastructure package, they approved funding to be able to build up water resiliency. But we know it's not just about conservation. We're gonna have to figure out ways to do augmentation. So we're gonna need to get creative because Arizona is a place where we don't reuse enough of our water, and we're not doing enough to make sure that we're taking advantage of technology that already exists in other countries. Arizona is woefully low in terms of how much water we reuse, how the technology that we're using is being utilized for agriculture, for things like watering your lawn and golf courses. We've already done that for years, but we need to go one step further. But I think we need to do more to build up that infrastructure, make sure that we're looking at augmentation as well. There has been a couple of plans, which a lot of us are really quite frankly concerned with, that the governor wants to be able to create a new water authority, but we need to get creative. So we need to make sure that we create new opportunities to bring in more water into Southern Arizona and across the state and make sure that we're putting funding, because without funding, we're not gonna be able to get any of this done. So I think the largest part that the federal government can do is provide funding to be able to do this, to help us conserve, reuse, and also augment the water here in Arizona.
Thank you. Avery.
Yeah, so I don't like the word drought. It assumes the fact that we'll go back to normal at some point, and we're at a point now where that might not be on the table. So we need to be creative about how we solve our water issues, especially here at the state level. So the federal government really can fund more innovative ways of desalinization, for example, is a great one for coastal cities. So you see cities across California, they can use green desal, just like Israel does. It's about 80% of the fresh water from desal, and that will kind of taper off their need to go through our water sources. we have at the state level, we have active management areas where we have the influx of agriculture now is to come up with ways where they can conserve water and use it more efficiently while not affecting the grandfathered in previous generation of farmers. There's saltwater aquifers, up north in the Phoenix area that could also benefit from solar pumps and smaller scale desal plants. But we need to be funding these kind of more innovative methods to desal or get more creative with our freshwater sources, such that we can adopt these en masse as the technology advances and we get more comfortable with our ability to produce for our growing population.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Yeah, this is, I would say, one of the top issues in this campaign, and one issue that we are going to be grappling with for many years to come. This taps into what's been my professional career in water and the environment, and something I've worked on a lot in the legislature. As I mentioned, working on the Colorado Drought Contingency Plan, because Arizona gets about 40% of its water from the Colorado River. And as we know, that river has gone into shortage because a lot of this is being driven by climate change. As Avery said, it's not something that's probably going to go get better. It's probably going to get worse. But we also have an issue out in our rural areas with respect to groundwater. Groundwater tables are being pumped dry by the total lack of any kind of regulation. We have opened our doors to foreign corporations, Saudi American alfalfa growers, Saudi Arabian alfalfa growers who are just pumping our water dry. Arizona's water should be for Arizonans. So there's a lot that we can do. Technology is key. Using technology from places like Israel that have thriving agricultural economies living in the desert. Those investments will be key. We should be reusing every single drop of water. We should be making sure that we've got the infrastructure to do so. We also have to make sure we're not contaminating our water. I don't know how many of you know that we have bad areas of water contamination in this district, in Tucson, near the Tucson airport, also up in Marana. And we need to be shading our canals with things like solar panels, doing things to stop evaporation and also use cleaner sources of water, of energy that use a lot less water.
So here's a wild card question. It's going to be the opportunity for each of you to ask one of your primary opponents a question. You'll have 30 seconds to ask the question when it's your turn. They'll have 90 seconds to respond. The person who didn't get to ask the question will have 15 seconds to weigh in after that, if they choose to. I'm going to be very strict about the time limits on this so that it's fair. All right? So first out of the gate, Daniel Hernandez, is there anything you wish to ask one of these other Democrats?
Avery, I'm 32. I'm not that much older than you. I think one of the things that I'm curious about is, why do you think being younger necessarily makes someone more qualified for being able to be a member of Congress?
Right, it's not a motivational kind of aspiration here, it's more of a motivation. So I feel like I have a lot of skin in the game. We're making policies now that are going to affect you for the next 60 to 80 years, hopefully. And then my children, right, if I decide to have them eventually, right now I'm a little bit apprehensive about it because I am a little bit worried about the climate we're living in right now. So, having, the most skin in the game, I think really sparks a fire and really makes you want to go out there. But I'm on the neck of my line. I'm not a politician, I'm an engineer, right? I look at code, I look at math, I look at science, and we make decisions on technology all the time. And that's so different from the world that I'm jumping into right here, right? This is one of the things where, I feel strongly enough about this where I feel like I really need to be, building some kind of grassroots movement about climate change. Making it, the top priority. This is going to be the biggest problem of our generation. We need to figure out how to solve it. So if I can provide, some sparks of inspiration to somebody else who sees me running, it's like, you know what, if he can do it, I can run it. I can do it too. And maybe I can inspire someone better than myself to run in the near future. And that's really my motivation here. And, being young, I think is really exciting for some people because this has been an older generation kind of industry for the longest time.
Kirsten, would you like 15 seconds to weigh in there? You don't have to.
Oh, well, on the issue of engaging young folks in this campaign and this, I think the young people are engaged, and I don't think you have to necessarily be young. I think that they are.
That was your
so
time.
much-
Sorry.
what was that?
Time's up.
That was time's up, okay.
But now it's your turn if you want to ask one of these candidates a question. You have 30 seconds.
Daniel, I guess I have a question for you. What are you going to do to protect our forests that are, lighting on fire as a result of drier conditions?
I think that's a great question. And one of the big things is actually going out into these rural communities, which is something that I've been dedicated to since the very beginning. As a representative in Santa Cruz County, we have very different climate and very different things that are needed in southern Arizona, where we have degrees that are a lot cooler and you can grow grapes and grow wine. But when we're talking about wildfire, especially in places like northern Arizona, or even some of the places that we might represent if we get elected in Graham and Greenlee, we need to really be working with the communities there. I think one of the things that I'm hearing from is the fact that these folks have to be self-sufficient because they don't have enough help and enough resources. In Elgin, we just had a fire in my legislative district. And one of my good friends, Gary, who owns Elgin Distillery, was having to basically go out there himself with a garden hose and with dirt to try and stop stuff. So I think what we need to do is make sure we're listening to what the needs are of these rural communities and make sure that we're doing more to incentivize and to really invest in these rural communities so that they have wildfire assistance and wildfire help when they need it. Because it can't just be down to the guy with his garden hose trying to save his property when wildfires are coming. So making sure that we're training more wildfire firefighters is something that I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of our folks who are in the cities, and what it takes to be a wildfire hotshot firefighter is very different than what it takes to be a firefighter in downtown Tucson or Phoenix. So we need to listen to them, we need to find out what their needs are, and we need to have more mobile resources to be able to kind of be dropped where we need them when wildfires are happening.
Thank you. Avery, if you'd like, you can have 15 seconds to weigh in on that.
Oh yeah, so I actually know a couple of wildfire firefighters personally, and their job is crazy. We fly them out from all over the place, California, Nevada. They are a different breed. I would like to say that, make that more known. Like, I didn't know that was a thing until very recently when I met these folks. So, we can fund these people that are trained to not only combat the fires, but stop them from happening in the first place.
Thank you. Now it's your turn if you'd like to ask one of these candidates
Yeah.
a question.
So I'd like to actually ask both of you the same question. If you could pick one issue, what's the most important issue to yourself and kind of why?
Pick somebody to go first.
Oh,
If you're gonna double up.
Well, I'd like to focus now on an issue that we haven't talked about. I think earlier in this forum, I would have said abortion rights, but right now I'm going to say voting rights, because what we are seeing right now is an assault by the Republicans on our voting rights. And, let's make one thing clear. Elections need to be determined by voters and not by politicians. And yet what we're seeing is the Republicans, changing the rules, undercutting our voting rights in order to keep themselves in power or get themselves in power. And when I was in the legislature, I stood strong against the big lie and all the bills that were being introduced to undercut our voting rights and burden our officials who are overseeing our elections. And I do think that this is a critical issue in our elections, as we're seeing from the January 6th hearings right now about what Trump did in order to try to get to steal the election. And we are seeing, bills being introduced in order to try to make sure that the Republicans are potentially able to do the same thing and real impacts on our marginalized communities and all of us. So I very much support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and also the Freedom to Vote Act. We need Congress to act on this. It can't be left up to the individual states because we're seeing what we're seeing here in Arizona.
Thank you. Because he asked you both, I'll give you 90 seconds as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Avery, for that question. Protecting our democracy is one of the key issues, not just of this moment, but of this campaign. That's why for over a year, I partnered with End Citizens United, fighting for the People Act, and then later the Freedom to Vote Act, after we couldn't get enough votes to pass the For the People Act. This is something that I've been involved in for a very long time. I even led a delegation of Arizona state lawmakers to Washington, D.C. of about 15, including our county reporter here in Pima County, to talk about the need for us to pass these protections at the federal level. Because when we didn't pass the For the People Act and later the Freedom to Vote Act, what happened? We saw over 500 bills introduced across the country, making it harder for people to be able to vote. Thankfully, we've been able to stop some of them and stymie them in the legislature, but it shouldn't be up to a small band of Republicans siding with Democrats to stop the ability for people to be able to vote and to be able to exercise their fundamental right. When we're talking about abortion, when we're talking about climate change, when we're talking about all of the issues that we as Democrats care about, it all comes back to elections and democracy. Because when people can challenge the core tenets of our Constitution and our institutions, we are in danger of losing our democracy. So whether it was on the January 6th commission hearings that just happened a couple nights ago, or at the legislature, we need to fight to protect everyone's ability to vote and to make sure that it's easier, not harder. That's why the first bill that I ever worked on when I was 20 years old was a voting bill for students that got passed and signed into law in 2010.
Thank you. Switching gears just a little bit, healthcare costs continue to be a very pressing concern for so many people in Southern Arizona, whether they're seniors or young families or employers looking to attract top-notch talent to our community. Just access to healthcare itself is an issue for so many rural residents, and the district you're looking to serve is pretty rural in some places. What federal policies would you push to help fix this situation? Avery Anderson.
Yeah, so really the first thing we need to work on here is access for rural broadband. Telehealth has come a long way in the past 5 to 10 years, and that's a really great opportunity for a lot of people that really don't have access to easy healthcare to get pretty quick and easy access to a majority of our serious healthcare issues. Secondly, here we need to expand on our Obamacare, right? So we have a lot of people that are really reliant on this healthcare program, and I've actually talked to a few people who unfortunately are they're debating whether or not to get married because the rates for on access for being a single parent with a child dependent is actually lower than if you get married. So that's really disheartening. That hurts families, it hurts kids to have to grow up in an environment where your parents can't legally get married because they're have to choose between healthcare costs and kind of family values and growing up normal. So I think really the big thing we can do at the federal level here is to increase our access to rural broadband and really expand on our telehealth capabilities.
Thank you. Kirsten Engel.
Yeah, this is a very, very critical issue, and especially in this district. I think the number one thing that I would work on would be to get down the price of prescription drugs. And I think that what this also does is it also tackles another issue that we haven't gotten into tonight, this afternoon, and that is inflation. And the way that is hitting so many families, the high cost of gas as well as the high cost of products, really hitting a lot of families hard. And one thing that we can do is to bring down the cost of something that so many families, it's a big part of their budgets, is paying for prescription drugs. And we know that right now, here in the United States, whether it's a cancer treatment or it's insulin, people are paying 2 to 4 times what they pay in other countries. We can do something about this. The most important thing to do is to give the government the authority to negotiate drug prices on behalf of Medicare. This will bring down the price of prescription drugs, not only for people on Medicare, but also people on private plans. And the money and the savings that we will gain from that, we can put back in to expanding some of the things that we know are so important that Medicare should be able to provide, like hearing aids, eyeglasses. These are things that we can do to really improve the health for everyone. I also think that broadband is very important because we need to make sure that we are getting healthcare out to the more rural areas. And as I have gone around this district, one thing I am hearing a lot is that there aren't the specialists out there. And one way that we can get the specialists there is through telemedicine, which we should work on.
Thank you. Hernandez.
Yeah, we could spend an entire hour just talking about healthcare. I started out wanting to go into healthcare. I did 2 years of cancer research. I worked as a nursing assistant. I worked in this district at TMC as a phlebotomist. This is something that I'm deeply passionate about. So I think one of the first things is during the middle of the pandemic, the federal government extended the subsidies for people who fell into that loophole, who made too much money to qualify for access here in Arizona, but not enough to be able to pay for healthcare out of their own pocket. Those subsidies are about to end. So step one, if it's not done by the time I get there, I want to make sure we expand and make those subsidies permanent, because too many people are being priced out of having healthcare. But we know just having a little plastic card in your wallet doesn't mean you actually have access to healthcare. We need to build up our healthcare infrastructure. So telemedicine is one way, but encouraging medical students and nurses and healthcare practitioners at every level to go into rural communities, border communities, by helping them repay their school loans as an incentive to take them to some of the highest need areas is going to be crucial. And I think thirdly, most importantly, really need to revisit what it means to be a rural access hospital. This is a really arcane and very basic level of policy at the federal level. But we saw this in this district in Green Valley when in 2020, a hospital was about to close. And it was the work that I did, partnering with federal partners and our governor to be able to secure the money to keep this hospital open. No hospital should have to worry about closing its doors in the middle of the pandemic because it's 29 miles, not 35 miles away from the next nearest hospital. So really redefine what it means to be a rural access critical care hospital to make sure that people don't have to rely on a very rambunctious legislator like me to save their hospital in the middle of a pandemic, and making sure that we prepare for the future of healthcare in Arizona by strengthening all of the reimbursements for folks that want to choose telemedicine as their option, because not everyone is going to be able to drive that 2 hours to go see that specialist.
Thank you. So CD6, as we all know, is a swing district. In 1 minute, tell us how you will win the general election in November if you win this primary. Kirsten Engel.
Well, that's the real issue here. This has been redistricted to a very, very competitive district. I think we calculated that as a result of redistricting, Biden won this district by just 400 votes. That's how close it is. I'm going to win this district by getting out there, talking to the people, what I'm doing right now, which is, going up to Eloy, talking to the veterans up there, going down to Wilcox, talking to the cattle growers. At the same time, I'm talking to the people who are working on protecting the San Pedro, getting out every weekend, knocking on doors, talking to people about what matters to them. And I'm also going to fight on the issues that they care about, talking about issues of water and how we can address that. That is an issue that, it is an issue that traditionally has not been terribly partisan. It's something that can bring people together. People can see front and center how important it is to the future of their family, as well as to their economy and their neighborhood, and to larger Arizona. And, really getting in there and working on the issues that will make an everyday improvement in their lives. Again, going back to this issue of inflation and high gas prices, talking about the solutions that we can use. Yeah.
Daniel, how are you going to win?
Can I clarify before? Is this our closing or is this?
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
No, we still got a few minutes now.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
How are you going to win?
We're getting close to time. I'm going to win this primary and I'm going to win this general election because I am from Southern Arizona. I know the needs of this community because I've lived here my entire life. So for me, this isn't just something that I just got into and I want to do this to win right now. It's what I've been fighting for my entire life, making the lives of everybody in their own communities better. I know how to win and I know how to fight. I know how to build coalitions. I know how to bring Republicans who normally wouldn't touch an issue with a 10-foot stick and not only educate them and bring them on our side, but to make them champions on these issues. I know how to work in rural communities, and I know how to bring and engage in young people. You know, one of the proudest things that I've done over my tenure as a school board member, as a legislator, now as a congressional candidate, is bring in new people into the fold, provide them opportunities, and empower other people. That's why I'm excited tonight to be joining the kids and the students from March for Our Lives, because the next generation, the one after me and Avery, is going to be the one that's going to have to live with a lot of the consequences of the decisions we're making today. But I know how to bring people together, I know how to win, and I know how to fight and get things done for Southern Arizona. And that's why I'm going to win in November.
Thank you. Avery.
Yeah, so my job here is just to convince everybody that my motivation is pure, right? I'm not a career politician. I don't have any history with politics. And in fact, about a third of my volunteer force are registered Republicans who are going door to door with me and you know, telling people that, hey, this guy, he's a Democrat, but hey, he's got some great ideas. He's motivated to make a difference in the world. And, you know, these are the issues that are important for him. And, you know, it's like a grassroots movement like that. It's really going to be important for us. And the only way I'm going to have a shot against these two guys. So, you know, really what it comes down to is, you know, I'm in this for the right reason. I'm really concerned about our climate. I think that we're at a critical inflection point where, you know, the decisions we make during this election are going to be the kind of the deciding factor on how hospitable or not, even this area is going to be in the next 10 to 15 years. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Thank you. So I am afraid that no matter how much I'd like to see this lively discussion continue, our time with these candidates this afternoon is nearing an end. So now each candidate will give a brief closing statement, but please respond to one more query as part of it. You each have varying degrees of political experience, but running for Congress is a very different thing than a state or local office. Please tell us something you've learned about yourself, about our politics and civic discourse, as you've asked Arizonans for their time, backing, and votes. Avery Anderson, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I came into this with no experience, right? I've never run for anything in my life. I approached actually Miranda, who's the one who put this together about, I think, last August or so. And I asked her, you know, how do I run for office? I'm not real impressed with what I'm seeing in Washington, and I think I need to put my neck out on the line to kind of stand up for what I believe is right and what I believe is needed now. So, you know, I go work through that process, getting out there, getting signatures. It was really only me and my girlfriend here that were doing it. So we were just kind of going, you know, door to door, farmers markets, flea markets, just getting out there, talking to people. And, you know, it's something that I initially was really out of my comfort zone, like doing it, approaching people about politics, which is like the most boring subject ever, right? So being able to talk to people and you know, show them, you know, explain to them why that I'm running, why it's important for me to run. And, you know, having this open dialogue with random people that I'm meeting for the first time has been really enlightening for me. I really enjoyed talking to people, finding out what's important to them, and also educating people. A lot of people, you know, climate change is one of those things where, you know, it's an invisible enemy, right? You don't see it. It's just a gradual approach to a you know, life-altering climate, right? So, you know, being able to explain to people, you know, why this is important, and you know, what even our most optimistic goals look like for this area has been, you know, tremendously enlightening. So I would like to say that, you know, even our most optimistic goals right now, so we call it 1.5 degrees Celsius, we're probably going to be closer to 2, even if we have like pretty optimistic legislation passed. We're looking at, you know, monsoon season being 25% more intense, droughts lasting 80% longer, crops having a 16 to 18% less yield. You know, more extreme weather, bigger heat waves. We're looking at a possibility where Tucson may be inhospitable in the next 50 years. So this is an issue that a concern of everybody. I think that needs to be vocalized, and everybody needs to understand the stakes.
Thank you. Daniel Hernandez.
You know, the biggest lesson that I've learned is that every challenge is really just an opportunity. When we look at our border community, when we look at our rural community, when we look at Tucson, each one has a different set of what are now, I'm considering, challenges that are really just opportunities to do something differently, to do something better. So that's why, whether it's helping the Eastern Arizona College expand their nursing program, which last year graduated 50 nurses in a healthcare shortage that we have here in Arizona, whether it's working in Sierra Vista to make sure that our seniors have access to the healthcare that they need, or working here in Tucson to make sure that our young people have the ability to go to college and to have a better life for themselves and for their kids than we did in our time. That's going to be the things that I'm going to be fighting for in Washington, D.C. My name is Daniel Hernandez. I'm running for Congress because I want to be your fighter. I know how to get things done, whether it was as a school board member, passing comprehensive sex education and including the community in that process, so that at no point no one felt excluded, whether it was parents, teachers, students, everyone was a part of that process. Whether it was as a legislator, fighting to secure $20 million for school counselors and social workers to take down that ratio, to make sure that our kids have the resources and the tools that they need. Saving the hospital in Green Valley to make sure that our residents in an area where the average age is over 70 didn't lose the one and only healthcare institution within 29 miles at the time. Or doing what I've been doing for almost a decade, fighting on gun violence prevention, fighting on voting rights, and fighting to protect the access for abortion for all Arizonans and all Americans. I am in this fight. I know how to build coalitions and I know how to win. I know how to bring people together in a way that very few other people have to. Why? Because I've never had a choice. As a gay Latino serving in the Arizona legislature, who was the youngest member when I got there, I didn't come with power. I built it by building strong relationships, getting to know my colleagues, and delivering real results for Southern Arizona. And that's what I'm going to do when I get to Congress. So thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Kirsten Engel.
Well, thank you. This is really a critical time. We're seeing an assault on our fundamental rights, our right to vote, our right over our own bodies as women. And we are also being struck by these larger issues, climate change, and how that is affecting our world and our economy. The drought that we're seeing as a result of that. Also, other issues that ordinary families are struggling with, just the cost of covering rent. The affordable housing crisis is real. These wells drying up in our rural areas. There are some real issues. So we're really at a critical time here, and this election is really key in terms of who is going to be able to champion on these issues. And what I have found from running for Congress is that the world is of allies is much broader than when you run on the state level. Working with national organizations, working with the scientific community, not only here at the University of Arizona, but across the country on issues of agriculture, dealing with energy policy, the possibilities of how we can bring in people to help us and work on these issues in collaboration with the people in this district. That's my vision for how we are going to address some of these most critical issues. I've been a teacher, a mom, also a legislator who worked on issues of funding for our public schools. I was able to work on getting money, helping to get money for special education, working on water for funding for water conservation. I talked to you about my work on criminal justice reform. I think there's many things that I can point to in terms of bringing people together, bringing together the experts, and bringing together the people who are impacted to find solutions.
Thank you all for being part of this forum today. Thanks to the organizers, the Pima County Democratic Party. Say a special thanks to the rest of our Tucson Sentinel team who all pitched in today to make this happen. And you can stop by and say hi to them. Get signed up for the Watchdog update email. We'll be moderating another discussion about CD6 in Green Valley at the Good Shepherd Church on July 9th. And of course, we owe these candidates great thanks for sharing these ideas with us today. Avery, Kirsten, Daniel, thanks so much for taking this time. thank you all for coming out on an April sunny Saturday afternoon to be part of this. Please give the candidates yourselves a round of applause.
I'd like to thank Dylan for moderating for us, our candidates for being here, all of you for coming, and Miranda Lopez, our director, for setting this all up. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Please.